Spend time before the Blessed Sacrament and adoration. That sacrament will give you grace that you don't understand and will never fully understand. It'll bring peace into your life.
The spirit of a father is a spirit of correction. A father has to be, of course, understanding of weakness and has to be somewhat soft, has to joke a little bit. But the father is mainly interested in the character of his children and will correct. And that never seems pleasant. It's an absolutely necessary task. And that aspect of human life has almost been drained out of our church culture.
Or even how you talk about St. Joseph, we get this, he's just holding tulips and he's just, real quiet, the quiet, silent type, versus, all the men I like, we like the title, I'm wearing the shirt, Terror of Demons. Like, that gets me going. Like, I want to know he's a fighter. He's going to fight for what's right. Just because, we're saved doesn't mean we got to be soft. All right, welcome back to Purposely Catholic. Today on the podcast, we have with us Dr. Michael Pakaluk. He has a PhD from Harvard in philosophy. He's a professor of political economy at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. He is a prolific author and a speaker, and we are so happy to have him on the podcast today. Thanks for taking the time and sharing some wisdom with us and our audience.
I am really looking forward to it.
Well, the main thing that we wanted to talk to you about was your book, The Shock of Holiness. And I think that is a very important topic just in general, because I don't think we are shocked very much by holiness, because a lot of us don't get to see it in real life. We read it in books, we hear it from the saint stories, but when we are confronted with people who are actually living a joyful, Holy Spirit filled life, who are on fire for the Lord, when you see that, you are shocked, because it not only shows you what it could look like, but it also helps show a mirror back to you of where you need to grow. So what brought about bringing all these essays that you put together into one book and to give it that title, The Shock of Holiness?
Well, okay, so those are two questions. So I write essays a lot, published on the internet, and there are hundreds of them. And some of them I think are actually worth preserving and passing on, because anything on the internet, it's really, it's almost like forgotten the next day. And but there are a lot of, you probably have read a lot of essays by G.K. Chesterton, C.S. Lewis, Father Schall more recently. There's a genre of writing for Catholics called Catholic essay writing, and I'm an essayist. I've written a lot of books, but I'm also an essayist. And I don't know, you have to be a little bit bold. I mean, if you're always worried that maybe you're being proudful by doing something in the world of writing, you'll probably never do anything. So you have to be a little bit bold. You have to say, look, I do think 50 of my essays are valuable and they have lasting value, and I'd like to put them before the public in that form. And that was my thought. Out of the hundreds, maybe it is humble then to say just 50 out of hundreds, right? And I sent what I thought maybe the best 300 to some close friends, and they generously read them through, and they graded them. A is a keeper, B, C is a reject, B is in between. And I basically took the intersection of all of these grades, and then I picked the ones that ended up in this volume. So the best of the best, the crème de la crème, the cream of the crop in this book. So that's how it got together. And the title was not my title. I'll tell you my ridiculous title. I really loved John Henry Newman. And I spent 1 year for my spiritual reading working through his 8 volumes of parochial and plain sermons, which when I look back at this, I say, how did you do that? Because you'd think that'd be a full-time job to read all those essays, but I did, all the sermons. And I believe that my thought about the Christian life and Scripture has been heavily shaped by my love of Newman and my wanting to imitate him and kind of think like him, because I'm so fascinated by it. So when I sent this collection to Ignatius, it actually had the title Parochial and Plain Essays, and instead of Newman's Parochial and Plain Sermons. And they said, no, I'm not going to call the book that. That's ridiculous. So what they did is they took, the book is divided into, 5 sections, maybe 10 essays a bit each. And one of them is on the saints. And that section had the title Shock of Holiness. And Ignatius liked that title. He said, this is a good title. let's make this also a title of the book. And so that's how it got that title. And they showed very good judgment. My view as an author is always defer to your editor. There's a division of labor in the world for a reason. I'm good at writing things. They're good at editing things. Yes, you think it should be a Shock of Holiness? Fine, Shock of Holiness is the name. However, I'll tell you this small thing. I wanted to call it just Shock of Holiness because there's a shock, like a shock of hair or shock of, it just means a cluster or group. So if you leave it at shock of holiness, then it could be either an electric like, shock or it could be a kind of a cluster. And I like that ambiguity, but they said no, it should be called the Shock of Holiness. So I had actually there I had even no chance of taking my side. They just completely overruled me, and that was the end of it.
They made it definitive. The shock.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where you find you're shocked everywhere else in the world, but here's the shock.
There you are. So my own
Mhm.
university, everybody calls it Catholic University of America, but its official title is the Catholic. It's like the Ohio State University,
Is
Yeah.
the Catholic University of America. And our new president, Peter Kilpatrick, is saying he wants everybody to be using that. We're calling ourselves the Catholic University of America.
We're kind of this is in good fun. It's a fun anecdote and in a little in jest, but there's some truth to this. Jesus doesn't say, "I am a way, a truth, and a life." He's the way, the truth, the life. So
Yeah,
it is a profound thing that's being conveyed here.
I think so. Yeah, the definite article. It's by the way, it doesn't exist in Latin. So it's in
Hmm.
Greek, but it's not in Latin. So go figure.
Well, while we're on this topic, I was very uh, moved by, like, it caused a lot of reflection in me. I think it was in your preface or your introduction. You talk about this idea of rediscovering. I think you even refer to it as like essays in re-enchantment, and it's poetic in nature, but there is this thing that we have to rediscover. Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about our faith as being this adventure that has to be rediscovered. There is this enchantment that is found, and to use your words, in the Christian household, in the Christian faith, that we've lost touch with.
Mm, yeah,
And we see a lot in the culture today, elements of our faith that have been plucked out
yeah.
and given a kind of a casual twist, a humanist twist. You don't just fasting doesn't serve this mortification of the body where I'm going to exert discipline so that I can free myself up for prayer. Fasting now has all these health benefits, and this is why you
Mm,
fast. But it's
yeah.
like it's so much more. Could you speak a little bit into that idea of re-enchantment?
Well, I'm going to throw you for a loop because actually end up turning against the word reenchantment. It does incur in the preface to the book, but I think that's a mistake. At one
Yes,
point,
that was more romanticized. I saw you.
at
I
one,
heard one of your interviews you're talking about. Yeah.
okay, there you go. So at one point, I told my editors I want to remove this word enchantment wherever it occurs in the book and turn it to romanticism, the romantic. And here's why: it's not a huge, deep philosophical point. It's just that um, enchantment originally comes from magic, right? So spells and chants and so on. Whereas romance really comes from Christianity. Tolstoy was not Tolstoy, but Tolkien was absolutely clear on this. Christianity is kind of the engine of everything that we call romantic. Romantic movies, romantic novels, romance and courtship. That didn't really exist in the pagan world. And so I ended up switching to that. But the basic point you say is really correct. The basic point is that because of the incarnation, because the sacraments are the continuation of the incarnation in the world today, even though the incarnation took place 2,000 years ago, there's something divine that suffuses the Christian life. It's like the sap in the vines. Our Lord, in fact, said, "I'm like the vine, and you're branches on the vine." The sap runs through vines, and that's it's divine. I'm not saying there's divine blood in me or anything like that, but he was baptized. Right? What does catechism say? When you get baptized, a new life is conferred upon you. You actually have a supernatural life. And it's not the same life. There's something that's supernatural that's been inserted into you through baptism. And so, therefore, I think there's just tremendous potential to look for. Let's take your example of fasting. We like to reduce things because when we reduce them, we think they can be quantified and they can be controlled, and we'd like to see immediate results. So I do this. I count my calories. I measure, take records of my repetitions and what exercises I'm doing. We love that, but when we do that, we actually, if that's what we're looking for, we're making a choice. We're choosing one kind of life over another kind of life. And life of
Mhm.
excellence of the body is good. It's really important. But there's also spiritual life, and spiritual life can't be quantified. Spiritual life doesn't have immediate consequences, and it does involve risk. So it's wagering, and whether anything's going to come back from it, you can't control. You have to leave it up to God. And that loss of control is very frightening, but it's the price of entering into this universe of the romantic.
What do you
What
think? Go ahead, Chloe.
what I like about that insight is you mentioned in the beginning this idea of wanting to call it parochial, which, if we could say for those who aren't familiar, your um, what is the normal everyday experience, right? I
That's
think
right.
in terms of
That's
a paired
exactly
setting,
right. So that's a very good insight because for Newman, parochial meant actually just the parish, right?
exactly,
But in
and
my title would have meant ordinary every day.
yeah.
Yep.
So for us who are watching and listening, I like that you're letting us into this idea that as I've reflected more on this term and how I've used it, I've actually come to a deeper meaning, a different meaning. In the spiritual life, I feel like that's so important in the normal and everyday, because how
Yes.
many times are we approached by people, if we are engaging other Christians or fellow pilgrims or travelers on this journey, or even those who haven't started yet, where they feel like I don't know enough. I'm not good enough. I haven't acquired enough. And it's like, well, there is no threshold that you cross and all of a sudden you go from, okay, I'm good enough, I'm not good enough to I'm good enough. It's
Mm.
like we're constantly evolving through our prayer life and through our study and through our relationships and deepening our understanding of what it means to be a follower of Jesus and what it means for him
Yes.
to live within us.
Yes.
So I just think that's a really important thing. It's like even you who've devoted your life and your career to study and to teaching and to sharing this. It's like, yeah, we were constantly evolving in our understanding and our um, expressions of what the faith means to us.
I really love saying I'm wrong or I was wrong. And
We need more of that.
we're talking about kids. I mean, how many times during the day do I make a fool of myself in front of my
Yeah.
kids? And
Uh, I
just
know I
I just love saying that was dumb. I was wrong. I'm sorry. That was a mistake. I just contradicted everything that I'm telling you.
Mhm.
Um, I love that. That's so good for our souls. And
Yeah.
and in the life of what I'm a creative person. I write. I think of things. Every single day, you've got to do that. You've got to say this former thing that I thought, it's actually not so correct. This is the correct, and you know that your date, whatever you think is correct today, is not actually going to be correct. But or there's more to it. But it's like
But our
that's
culture today, it's like if you change your opinion or if you've developed an idea that you once professed, you're a flip flopper. It's
yeah,
almost an attack against your credibility.
yep,
And yet that's a tactic of the evil one, because to
yes,
do, and you use the right word, it's humility.
yeah,
It's like to say I'm wrong. It's this exercise and I don't know everything,
yep,
but I'm trying and here's what I know now.
yep,
And let's discuss the merits of it and how
yep,
could it be better? Because who of us is going to capture the fullness of what it means to be true?
yep. But think about Peter and the way he was kind of backtracking on on the dietary laws. And okay, so here's Peter. He's the rock of the church, picked by Jesus to be his successor, and a grown man. I don't know how old he was, but let's say he's 50 years old, and really just being very foolish. And
Mhm.
That's, by the way, the Gospel of Mark is just so filled with foolishness of Peter, which Saint Jerome said is the best argument that it was actually Peter who dictated the stories to Mark, because nobody else would have made fun of Peter in the same way.
Isn't it
Right.
funny that Peter calls himself out in the Gospel of Mark, and yet John calls himself the beloved disciple? I mean, the juxtaposition is
But there's humility in that too, because he never uses his own name. He just, says the disciple whom Jesus loved, and
yeah.
No big deal.
very hidden, very hidden. But John
Well,
waiting at the tomb, while
yeah,
Peter,
and
because
it's a lot faster. Yeah.
Peter's much older, so
Yeah.
John's a young man. He got to the tomb fast. Peter
Mhm.
was slow and lumbering.
Well, do you think that whether you use the word enchantment or romanticize that we need to get that back because we've lived so much in this material world? And my question would be, since you have so many children, how do we do that? Khalil and I are both fathers, to help our children to see that in the ordinary, like you said, at the mass. Like, I'm able to start to be able to do that at daily mass by meditation and prayer and things like that. But how do we bring that to our families, into our house, to show that these ordinary things that just seem ordinary don't have to be that way? Like C.S. Lewis says, you never meet mere mortals.
That's
Like,
a
how do
great,
we instill that into our children?
that's a great line. Well, I think we have to use the language of the faith, first of all, just very straightforwardly. And what we'll find that actually it's not a question of instilling, it's probably more a question of beating back, because kids are idealistic and they have big imaginations. I'll tell you a great story along those lines. When one of my children was being baptized, we're telling all the other children, baptism, you die, and then you're reborn in Christ. And we were telling them this for weeks, and then finally at the baptism, afterwards we drive away in the car, and one of my kids said to me, and I think he was 4 or 5 years old, said, wasn't it great that so and so didn't die today? Like, it turns out he was expecting that we were bringing his sibling to the church to die, to be killed. It's like the sacrifice of Isaac. That's his mind, when he was hearing this language, had made it so real and true that afterwards he was giving thanks that the baby hadn't actually died in the baptism. That's the extent, the reach of a child's mind. So I don't think it's a question of instilling. I think it's a question of just being straightforward and honest with them. Now,
And,
signs are
and
important. Like kneeling is very important.
yeah,
Or when we pass a church, we take off our hats and we make the sign of the cross. And this points to something invisible, but the kids are easily picking up the invisible.
yeah,
Mm.
that's a good point. I know for me, especially it's reading stories. That's what we try to read, those fairy tales and those stories, and recapture that.
Yeah,
I know if you're familiar with Jonathan Pajot, that's what he talks about, reenchantment a lot. But it's
yeah,
about in the view of these fairy tales, when you actually study and look at them, there are a lot of them are based on stories of the gospel, like
yeah,
Sleeping Beauty and things like that. So they're really trying to take the best parts of those and those lessons. But when kids read it, they got the sword, they're fighting the dragons, it doesn't take much for them to use their imagination and to turn a stick into a sword, or whatever it may be, to try to save, and their imaginations are going wild.
yeah.
But how do we take those kinds of stories, and then make it Christian? How do we best do that, other than, okay, we say a lot, more is caught than taught. Yes, let's do the things, let's genuflect, let them catch us saying our prayers, let them catch us doing all the things that we should be doing, but especially beating back the culture who wants to tell them what, it's just material, and these stories are, those kinds of things. But how to like spark that within them to want to see the world in that way, like a child.
Well, I think you've said it. I mean, we have to nourish their imaginations. Uh,
Yeah.
Tony Esolin's been very good on this. His book about destroying the imagination of your children. Um,
Mm.
Anthony Esolin, his writing, he's very, very good on this. Something like 10 ways to destroy the imagination of your child.
No, but I'll have
Um,
to look it up.
yeah, that's definitely worth reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, minimize the use of screens, read things aloud, go out to nature, more is caught than taught, as you said, use signs, um, eh, posture, dress. Um, and, every kids, of course, love the candles and the bells. What about simply lighting a candle at the family dinner? We do this during
Mhm.
Advent. We light the Advent wreath. You probably do too. And then we sing a song after we blow it out. Everybody's fighting over who gets to light the candle this time and who gets to
Yes.
blow it out. But that means a ton. Just meeting around the table with a candle for a kid. That's correct, of course, because this is the great thing about fire, whether it's a fireplace or a candle. You have something that's a highly destructive force, and you've tamed it. You've put it inside your house, and you're kind of making a statement. We can control this force, and this force also represents something. It's like my heart within my body. It's like my soul within my body. It's like the love of the family within the household. It stands, and kids see all of these resemblances at the same time. It's easy to teach them those analogies.
Uh, as I'm continuing to grow and evolve or develop as a father, one of the things I've been focused on is the idea of passing on ritual to my children, and that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying here. Um, because for them, life is just it could be chaos. Toys strewn around the house, and they'll just eat snacks all day, and they just you give them an iPad, and there goes the afternoon. It's just you have to give them this idea of instilling order and to do it in a fun way and in a way that's triggering for them in a positive sense. Like, okay, now I know we're gonna have dinner. We lit the candle. Now I know we're gonna, my kids know once we start bless us, oh Lord, all right, time to calm down. It's dinner time.
Mm, yeah.
So the idea of rituals ingrained in us, trying to transmit that to my children has been very important to me. But I noticed that I can't do that authentically unless I'm a man of ritual too.
Mm,
That I'm not being intentional. If I'm not being intentional in my day by saying this hour is going to be devoted to adoration, this 15 minutes is going to be devoted to a daily scripture reading, this time is going to be when I go to the gym and make it a ritual, then I'm not developing in it. I'm not growing. I'm not nourishing myself. I'm not authentically representing that for my kids. So I
that's a
find the idea of capturing ritual really important.
that's a great statement, and I really love the direction that this discussion is going in because it's new for this book. I've done dozens of podcasts on this book, and I like this. This is really important. I like the idea of order in the household. All right, so
Mm,
Aristotle said that the things in the household, like furniture, are like the instruments of daily life, and it's similar to setting up the stage for performance. So, before the performance, everybody's like putting everything exactly where it belongs, and the props and the scenery in the background, and then the actors come and they do their thing. And the order of a household is like that. It's like saying when the parents care about the order, and as you mentioned, you have to find the mean here. You can't be crazy about disorder if you have kids, because kids are going to create disorder. So you have to be very patient, and you have to do your best in the circumstances. But to the extent that you can keep the household orderly, to that extent, you're making a statement. What goes on here is highly important. In fact, it's the purpose of our life. It's actually much more important than when you go out to work or you do something else. It's this realm where we're relating to one another and carrying on daily life. This is really important, and we're setting a stage for it. We're going to take it seriously, and but taking it seriously in the household, is not taking it seriously. That's the
mhm,
great, as Chesterton said, the great thing about a man's house is he can come home and he can eat dinner on the carpet if he feels like it. Just bring the.
mhm.
And we should try to do that. Like we should try to verify Chesterton's idea. Like sometime where the head of the household sitting around the dinner table, everybody's very orderly and calm down and said, "Hey, let's grab our plates and go sit down on the floor in the living room and have dinner
Yeah,
there." Wouldn't that be a great thing to try?
good idea.
Well, I think the word ritual has become a bad word, especially when it's, we're talking to our Protestant brothers and sisters, like, well, we
Mm,
don't have all those rituals. Like you said, Chesterton gives an example. Everything that we do is ritualized, whether we
Yeah.
know it or not. How
Yeah.
we eat dinner, how we
Yes.
sit and we look at each other, how whatever we're doing, how we shake hands, how you get up and go to work. Everything is ritualized. So to use it as a bad word versus, hey, some things are a little bit more formal that we ritualize, some things are informal. But to make the R word like a bad word, like, whoa, you got rituals and that Catholic stuff is so weird. It's like, well, have you stopped and think about, like, everybody goes through those rituals? But I think our children also are craving that because it creates order. It creates that tranquility of peace, as Augustine says. And it's one of those things, like, but we can't be so orderly where we become tyrants in our own homes either. I think of that Lego movie with Will Ferrell, and the kid, like, he glues all the Legos together and the kid is going to, like, pull them apart. And he's like, no. And it's like, we have
Mhm.
to have room for where things can get disordered, and that's where creativity comes in. That's where they
Mhm.
can play and do those things. But then we know, okay, now it's time to clean things back up, but to have that space and to let them be creative and to do that. But I think that we need to recapture that word ritual, and whether we're acknowledging it up front, but to not be scared of it. Like, well, yeah, we have rituals and they're beautiful and they're timeless and they go back to the beginning of the church, and try to defend and explain it better to other people. Like, everything you do is a ritual.
I think that that's a really profound point. And and then this is what the anti-ritualists end up really standing for. Like, everything is a ritual. Like, drying my hands after I go to the bathroom is a ritual. Where I put my shoes in my closet is a ritual. We go through everything. It is a ritual. I agree with that. Grant the premise. But what that means is that somebody who's against ritual is really against ritual only in the very highest things, like in the most important things, because this
Yeah.
person is going to be, as you said, inevitably ritualistic in every other thing.
Yeah.
So what a bizarre position that is. Like, I'm actually going to be ritualized in everything, even though I don't recognize it. And then finally, when I get to say being before the Lord, now I'm going, oh no, ritual would be
Well,
bad.
well, they've
It's
ritualized
actually,
that as
it's
well.
actually, it's just disrespect. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
what they do is they do the same thing. They do a song, someone gives their
Yeah,
sermon.
true.
Every week, whatever their services are, they're still ritual. They're not all every week reinventing it. They're not like, oh, we're just going to be led by the Lord, and who knows what
Mm,
we're going to do, how we're going to do it. No, they come in, they sit, they greet each other, they get out their Bibles, they do their sermons. They have a ritual. It's just that it's informal, and they're wearing blue jeans and their smoke machines and whatever it may be. I'm not trying to disparage them, but it is a ritual, and to act like that is a bad word, I just don't think they really thought that through.
I think that's another really profound point. When I was a Protestant, I was an atheist until college, and after a near-death experience, I became through through discovery a Christian. And my first Christian experience as a Christian was an evangelical Christian fellowship, InterVarsity Christian fellowship, which I love. It saved, it's a lifesaver for me. But as you know, in these congregations, they practice improvisational prayer. And nobody reads oral prayers. Every time you pray, you make up your own prayer, and that's fine. But as you said, it is not entirely new. You have certain elements and phrases, and you use them and you put them together. And actually, if you've heard 10 prayers from one person, you pretty much know what his 11th prayer is going to sound like. Because we're not great geniuses. We're not a great. It's like a jazz artist. If I play jazz, I'm going to play basically the same riffs because I don't have a lot of creativity. There are very few people who have a great deal of creativity, so you have to keep repeating things. So I think you're correct. Even it's and that's good. It's We're not supposed to be great geniuses. We're supposed to be rather humble people who repeat things because of the importance of what they're repeating, not because it's coming from them out of their creative spirit.
Mhm. Bringing it, well, including also bringing it back to uh, life in the household. For those who are watching, listening, especially fellow brothers who are fathers, and for those who are watching, listening, who are mothers, ritual doesn't mean everything has to be orderly and perfect and tidy and set. And it's about being intentional in that which you're doing. And so it was very helpful to me. It was like a flip of the switch when I see the what looks like chaos to me, what my children can do. I've got 3 under 6. Well, if I frame that properly, the toys all over the house, the bed's flipped up, even though we try to put everything back together, to them, the floor is just the largest shelf in the house. That is
Great.
how they play.
That's
So,
great.
in our ritualizing our life in the order that we want for our lives, that's okay. That has a proper place. They're being creative, they're having fun. If the way we get to Mass, if I'm going daily, if I'm going on Sunday, the way we get to Mass, depending on the season of life you're in, I've got young kids. Most Sundays, it's just by the skin of our teeth, we're getting to Mass before Father's walking down the aisle, right?
Hmm.
There's always something that's happening, but that's okay. Like I don't want people to think like, oh, I just don't have it together enough yet,
Yeah.
or I'm failing, or
Yeah.
yes, we could all be doing better, we can all be doing more, but it's really important to keep in mind like the choices you make in life. If you're choosing not to do something, that's a choice you've made.
Yep.
So if you're seeing, wow, I don't like this part of my life, or
Yes.
I'd love to infuse some ritual or some order here, but you're not, you've made that choice.
Mm. Yes.
Whether or not you've intentionally thought about it and willed it, and you've made that choice.
Yep.
So to
And it
reflect
can be
on,
bad rituals too. Like that's every addiction
there can
is
be. And
based
so
on
you've made
like I
that
came home, I
choice.
did this thing, and those things trigger those. It can really go wrong the other way too, big time.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really great. I like to think of what I'd say to God. Right, so I arrive at Mass 10 minutes late, and almost my family. Look, I've been raising kids for decades, and we always get to Mass 10 minutes late, right? And people say, well, just start getting ready 10 minutes earlier. Okay, we start getting ready 10 minutes earlier, and we arrive 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
Or people say, there's that last thing that you will try to fit in, and that's causing you to be late. And I admit that, and I still get in 10 minutes late. So I don't know why. Maybe it's just another one of these humiliations, or you have to confess your own lack of power or whatever. But maybe sometimes we're 5 minutes late. But I think if the question is if and no one ever cares if somebody with a large family comes in late. But suppose somebody did care, I would say I don't really I personally don't care about this person's opinion. If I had to go, if I had to justify my behavior before God right now, that's what really matters. And as you said, sometimes, um, I deliberately choose things that are destructive and they help us, get to mass late. But if I'm trying my best and the circumstances are out of my control, and one thing you have as a father, you have to be very careful about is how you deal with your wife and your daughters. I don't know what it is. Women take longer to get ready, and it never helps to try to pressure them to go faster. So you just have to kind of sit
Yes.
back. You have to sit back and just let them get ready in their own
Well,
time.
here's a pro tip that I've learned because I get bad anxiety because I'm always the first one ready, and I got to wait for my daughter who's 12 and my wife who's gorgeous and beautiful, but she takes her time. I, but I would be ready, and I'd be like a roaring lion cage, like going back and forth. Like I
Hmm.
start getting this anxiety because I'm always 15, 20 minutes early. That's just my dad. That's how we
Yeah,
all are, no matter
yeah.
what. So I get that anxiety. So I said, look, I won't start getting ready. Give me the 5 minute warning. And then I'll start getting ready. Like, let me know when you're 5 minutes away. Then it takes me, I got no hair. I'm like, my clothes are like, I throw them on. Like, it's pretty easy for me to get ready. So just give me the 5 minute warning. And then boom, it's getting smooth. They're like, just get your shoes on, let's get there. And what I've been doing now that's really been working because as soon as we get in the car, and then my son's 9. So, they want to fight who's sitting in what spot. And what song are we gonna listen to? It's like, no, we're doing the rosary now. So there's been no fighting for the last like 2 months.
Mm,
We've been doing the rosary on the way to church. There's no fighting because we're praying. And
that's
even if they're not
fantastic.
praying and doing it all the way, it's like there's no even room to ruin because the evil one will want to try to get in between that. Like we're going to do something great, and we walk
Yeah,
into church,
absolutely.
we're frustrated
Yeah,
because of the kids, or we're running late. It's like that's what
yeah,
the evil one wants.
yep.
That's I'm listening to the screw tape letter thing on Hallow now. It's like that's what he wants. He wants us to go there with hearts that are angry and upset. But we hear all throughout the scriptures, like if you got a problem, like just leave your gift and go and reconcile if you need
Yeah.
somebody to forgive or you need to be forgiven. And that's sometimes what can happen is I like that analogy that you say, like a mom going to daily mass with 5 kids, it's like the battle of Iwo Jima. It's like, hey, like we should do a better job in church to look into, like, you don't understand that struggle. Maybe you do, maybe you're past that, but to remember, put yourself in your shoes. Like, what was that like? I got in the car, one shoe's off the kids. This one's hungry. This one's got to go to the bathroom. It's like, so having that grace and to encourage the other families, because it's hard enough and it is like a battle. And when you win it and you're not, tearing each other's hair out by the time you get to mass, that's a win. And that's a winning a big battle. And I really like that about this book. That's what you're trying to do, to romanticize something as what it seems like ordinary, that we just go into mass, but it's not ordinary. And when we do it with the right ways and we take a step back and be able to get in that presence of what is actually going on, we can see that there's something supernatural obviously going on, but there's something romantic about it.
Yeah. I have 2 ideas I want to say. One is this 5-minute warning has the hazard that if you're not ready in the 5-minute period and you come in late, everyone will come down upon you like a ton of bricks. Like, you're making us late. Yes. You've been hassling us all this time, and now you are making us late.
Right? I'm slick. I get ready, so I'm like,
okay,
I set myself up where it's only. I already shaved. I did all my other stuff. I won't put my clothes on, my jacket, all those kinds of things.
The romanticism really does show in everybody. If a couple stays together, and divorce is one of the great scourges of our society. So I hope people do stay together. But if they stay together and they're 60 years old, and they look back on those times when they used to have these hassles and the shoes falling off and everything going wrong, they have a deep ache in their heart because those times have passed. Or anyone who's been very close to, I certainly have lived in under the official poverty level for many years of my life, and you look back at those years and they seem very special. They don't actually seem bad. They seem very special. So when we look back and we think that they're special, what we're seeing with greater clarity, because we don't have all the pains at that point, is that romantic aspect of them, which is real.
I'd like to ask you about, because that image is so important. You mentioned previously, if you were having to give an account to God, how would that go?
Especially for someone who's always late all the time. Khalil's on your side because he's casually like 10 minutes late.
Like me? I'm 10 minutes late, you mean?
Listen, I live life to smell the roses.
I'm not casually. It's a battle every day. And look, it's like my golf game. I never succeed at golf, but I still keep trying.
Yes. Yeah, maybe it's just a healthy sense of the party doesn't start till I walk in. That type of thing. But this idea of like
you're taking time with everybody. You give people 100% of your time. And I think that's important too. Sometimes it's like we're just moving on to the next thing. So don't put yourself short. You are giving people your attention. And that's important. And sometimes when it's somebody else who's waiting on the other end, who's just
Bobby, I'm not cutting myself short. You are. So that's all right, buddy. So that idea of giving an account, like what Bobby and I talk about is like if when it came time for judgment, all right, you're standing at the pearly gates, St. Peter flips the book open, we get screen time reports on our phone. This is how you spent your time today. This is how you spent your time this week. If God does that, at some point, right, we flip forward in the page in the book of our life, and there's a page with a date circled in red, and that's when we're going to get kind of the report of our lives, how we've spent it. Well, it's like, all right, I pray that I've spent more time loving. I pray that I've spent more time doing and choosing and pursuing good, true, and beautiful things. I pray that I've had more patience. I pray that I've lived that type of life and not one that was wasted. All right, please God, that be the case. But in order to live that life, we have to have a fearlessness, a boldness. There's been this, there's been this trend that seems to be breaking a little bit where we're too afraid to live our life of faith in the public space unless we get judged by people. I mean, practically speaking, if you're watching, you're listening to this, when's the last time you invited somebody to mass? When's the last time you invited somebody to a Bible study? When's the last time you mentioned the name of Jesus? How does it feel like to you when you're in a public space like a restaurant and you're saying grace as a family, living with that boldness? So when it comes time to give an account, you can see that I lived a life of faith, of integrity. I didn't
Mm,
shy away from
yeah.
living my faith and being a witness to my faith. Could you speak into like that bravery and that courage that comes um, in living the life of a disciple in our spiritual lives and what role it ought to have?
I've always had a very strong devotion to Saint Joan of Arc, and um, I mean, when I went to a church for many years where they had a fantastic statue of her, and after mass in the morning, I'd walk past it and see her, and she was dressed in her battle gear, and I thought to myself, well, that's me. I'm going off to do battle of a certain sort. There are the ordinary struggles, the discipline you have to work with, all of the trials and tribulations. But you mentioned a particular courage. Um, I don't know. Why are we so cowardly? It's not like they're real risks. We're not in danger of being arrested and sent off to concentration camps. Just maybe somebody's opinion of us is a certain way,
Mm.
and why do we even care about that? So I the other thing that you talked about is the screen time report, right? So God, for God to keep everything in existence, He can't keep it in existence except He knows it. So He knows every tissue in your body. He knows the molecules. He knows the location of them. He knows what they're doing. He knows every second of your time, what you're doing. If you have a dumb thought, He knows that you've had a dumb thought. It's completely transparent. This is what our Lord said. There's nothing that's whispered that won't be shouted from the housetops. Everything about us is absolutely completely transparent to God. You can't hide anything from God. You can't fudge the numbers with God. You can't, like I love the baseball playoffs we've been watching. We can't kind of change where your mitt is to kind of trick the umpire to think that it's a strike when it was a ball. You can't do any of
Mm.
that stuff with God. And but I think that he has mercy for us. Most of the words for mercy in the Bible are also translatable as pity. I mean, he has pity for our weakness, and but we can do more. And I think the examination of conscience is really important. And be ruthless in examining yourself. And earlier I talked about the how we shouldn't try to quantify, but quantification sometimes does have its uses. It's like I love golf. It's my favorite sport. But you really don't improve until you keep track of things like fairways that you hit and greens and regulation and things of that sort. And absolutely, you can't cheat. If you help yourself to strokes, you'll never get any better. So it's the same, but that's the same in the interior life. You have to it, now and again, to make progress, you have to quantify your things. So, how many people did I talk to about Christ today? How many times did I pray for this friend that he might grow closer to the Lord? Let's just look at time. You earlier mentioned time. Did I spend time in prayer? Did I spend time before the Blessed Sacrament? Did I go to Mass? Oh, and meanwhile, I wasted 2.5 hours on this nonsense, right? So, I think we need to be kind of ruthless in that examination of conscience in the evening.
Mm.
Yeah, I think, for me as a convert, I've been really struck over and over again by this phrase from Father John Riccardo, who just said that rescue people rescue people.
Mm,
And for me, that's what happened to me. So it's like I'm outside the Catholic norm of people who grew up in the church, and this is just what we do when we go every Sunday. For me, it was an encounter. It was one moment that I can turn to and say, okay, this is where I was at. It was in a pit, and God rescued me.
mm,
And so for me, it's a lot easier because I can pinpoint that moment. I
mm.
can know, hey, I was this way, now I'm this way, and this is the reason why. So that's for me, it's little bit easier. But you still got to be, I'm studying the Beatitudes right now. We're doing a Bible study of Matthew. And a lot of that is, the four things that Aquinas talks about: that wealth, power, pleasure, and honor, that we really are worried about what people think, that we're so attached to those things of our status, or, whatever it may be, that somebody may think we're silly, or we're a zealot, or whatever it may be. But like Khalil said, it does seem like the tide is turning, that it's okay again to speak that in the marketplace of ideas, and that it's people who are into Jesus and the Catholicism. They're not like, anti intellectuals anymore. We're starting to see a lot of people who are very smart, like yourself, and people who are, teachers in prestigious universities, who are believers. So I think that if the trends keep going this way, it's looking good. But where I'm always thinking about is for men, and what that looks like to sell it to men, because so much in the Catholic Church, we see the images of Jesus with, the lamb over his shoulder, and he's real nice, and, just be nice to people and just get along. And what I'm attracted to is because I grew up with Hulk Hogan and Rambo, and, before I was Catholic. And, what does it mean to be a man, not being, toxic masculinity, but what does a biblical man look like? To stand firm, to be a leader in your household, to stand up, to not be afraid to talk about Jesus in front of people, to be a lion, but also to be a lamb, to be meek, and trying to express that to men. It's like, this is the adventure of Christianity that Khalil also talked about, is that we just need to recapture, like, people like Saint Joan of Arc, these saints that you talk about in these essays, is that these are the examples. They're not weak. They're not
Hmm.
just in churches praying. Joan of Arc was one of the best warriors in the history of the world. Saint Thomas More lost his life because he stood up for the faith. Like the people that you talk about in your book, like, we need to do a better job of selling what the shock of holiness is, what it looks like to
Hmm.
people. Like, it's attractive, but if it's just these, prayer cards, it's like, it looks like someone's just praying, and they're just, don't mess with, they're really nice, and just leave them alone. But selling, St. Moses the Strong, or St. Joan of Arc, like, recapturing, hey, like, the Crusades isn't we don't have to shy away from, people fighting in the Crusades and things like that. And especially that speaks to men. Have you
Yes.
had that experience in the faith, especially in the university level, with trying to recapture authentic masculinity in the framework of our faith?
Well, that's a really big question. And gee, I wish our clerics were doing a better job. You
Mm.
know, um, obviously the homosexual influence in our church has been very, very bad. And the more manly a priest is, the more manly a bishop is, the more effective they are as an apostle. And so everything that you're talking about is correct. It needs to be affirmed. Maybe the representations of Jesus are important. Many things we could talk about in this regard, but look at the Shroud of Turin. That's not a representation of somebody who's soft and weak. That's a very strong face.
Mm.
Um, looks a little bit like you, Bobby, but very strong, very angular. Obviously, he's not overweight, and did Jesus have, was he built up? He probably was because he was a carpenter, manual laborer. Um,
It's
so,
hard work.
yeah, I remember once when, at one point, one year, when my kids were really young, and we did the Stations of the Cross during Lent every day, and I actually drew them, and I drew Jesus with a kind of Mr. Universe physique. I mean, he was built up. He was very muscular, and that was my intuition of how to represent him. And it was my kids loved it. But why not? I mean, the Passion is a feat. I mean, it's a feat of strength, and to get scourged and then to continue carrying a cross is not something a weak person can actually do. Of course, he could have summoned supernatural strength at any time, but I think he didn't. I think he left that to just his human strength. So, why not more representations of Jesus as actually, kind of muscular? That would be it. That's interesting.
Or even how you talk about Saint Joseph, we get this, he's just holding tulips, and he's just, real quiet, the quiet, silent type, versus, all the men I like. We like the title, I'm wearing the shirt, Terror of Demons. Like, that
Yeah.
gets me going. Like, I want to know he's a fighter. He's going to fight for what's right. Just
Yeah.
because, we're
I,
saved doesn't mean we got to be soft.
I,
It's like
I've got two thoughts on that. I'm a pastoral associate at our parish. Bobby and I are at the same parish. Um, yeah, two thoughts as I've reflected on that. One, your comment about our clergy.
Mm,
And we say that as sons of the church with all due respect, like we want more out of our priests and our bishops. Lead
yep,
us. You are our
yep,
shepherds.
yep,
A shepherd is one who tends to the lambs and fights the wolves.
yep,
We want more, please. I mean, that's a challenge, but it's one that we offer in humility.
yep.
I think that the two thoughts are, especially in the within the breadth in the life of the church, most recently, and this isn't disparaging anyone, but you see within the church there's been a heavy feminine influence.
Mm,
I mean, the stereotype of your average Catholic parish is like father, a secretary, and maybe a volunteer. He's going to be surrounded by women. Again, not a bad thing. Jesus was surrounded by women who served. The apostles were surrounded by women who served. But there hasn't been a stable presence of men engaged in their faith, working alongside their priests, bringing that masculine energy
mm,
that the church needs in balance. So I think that that's one, and I hope that the tide changes there. You know, you mentioned living below the poverty line. Working for a church, you don't do it for the money. You do it
mm,
because you feel like you've been called to do it. It's a
mm,
mission. So I pray more men, as they think about their lives and how they're going to spend them, see the church as a viable, quote unquote, career path. I want to give my life in service to the Christian community in a
mm,
stable way, right? That's being a professional in the church in a stable way. The second thing is we also haven't engaged the men in our in our communities properly, right?
mm,
Bobby, you and I talk about this a lot. It's like, don't just invite me if I'm a guy to move chairs, to set up for the festival, to be an usher. That's going to bore me. It's not going to excite me. You're not touching my faith. You're not getting me to tap into that which God has gifted me with, my charisms, his divine life within me. I'm not going to assume that responsibility that he wants, for me to be a father and a leader, if that's all you're asking of me. And so I am going to be disconnected. And we saw a generation, two, three of men who felt alienated from their churches. What we're seeing now, though, is men being called and challenged to rise up and accept the adventure that is following Jesus. Pick up your scripture, do what it says. The sacraments of the church, do you engage them? Do you live in brotherly fraternity? Yes, if that's your capital V vocation, that's your number one relationship. But you know what? And you mentioned Aristotle, manly relationships with brothers is one of the highest relationships that you can have. So who are you surrounding yourself with? We need a male presence like that. And so I think those are the two things that w- the Holy Spirit's moving us in that direction. And so can we see that, meet the moment, and engage men, have them step up and assume those roles that we need them to assume within the community?
great statement. Yeah, you wonder about the prudence of some decisions in the church when you think about, for example, the erosion of the altar boys, so that,
Mm,
look, in principle, altar girls can serve just like altar boys. But if you have this oasis of masculinity concentrated there, why disperse it? Why attack it? It's, as you said, we have very little places where we have strong masculinity. The kind of core of service of the priest surrounded by altar boys, that's very clear. We can see that it's a statement of masculinity. Why in
mm.
the world would you change it? And of course, once even at one or two girls become altar girls, then the boys don't want to participate anymore, and they become all altar girls. Um, and the endless campaigning to ordain women, please, the priesthood is manly, and so yeah, I agree with that completely. What you said.
What I say, and it applies to women too, Bobby. You mentioned like, what do we say to the men? And we have a particular heart for our brothers, but it applies to men and women. Is wherever attention goes, energy flows.
Mm,
I love Dr. Pakaluk, your line from the book. I actually journaled it. Grace will assuredly be imparted by the objective character of the sacrament. Grace will assuredly be imparted by the objective character of the sacrament. I love that. It sounds theological, but it's not. The sacraments do what the sacraments say they're going to do, whether we feel it or not.
mm,
It's beyond our emotions. And so where my attention goes, do I go to adoration? Catholics, you guys talk about adoration. All right, you say that's Jesus. You want me to go there, but I don't feel anything when I'm there. Believe me, spend time in the presence of our Lord. Saint Carlo Acutis now would say, if you stand under the sun, you will get tanned. You don't have to try to get tanned. Spend time in blessed and before the Blessed Sacrament and adoration. That sacrament will give you grace that you don't understand and will never fully understand. It'll bring peace into your life. It'll give you a sense of understanding. It'll reveal yourself to yourself. It's the gentlest form of practicing ritual. And that's just one of the things that you can do. Going to mass, I just didn't feel the mass. The homily wasn't the best. Oh, they asked for a second collection. We can gripe so much, but you know what? If you received our Lord, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist, you've received the fullness of his divine life given to you. And so it will work with it. So I love that line. What inspired you, Dr. Pakaluk, to frame it in the context of that essay? And what are some practical ways that we can think about it and live it?
Well, I love that you quoted and journaled that line. I've written a lot of scholarly articles and books, but when you write for a more popular audience, one of the things that you need to do as a writer is try to come up with things that are quotable and that are memorable just by the way you say them. So I've been deliberately trying to do that, and I'm really happy that I succeeded there. Do you remember what essay it was part of, that one that you're
You
quoting?
know, it's just in my journal. I
Yeah.
didn't notate where in the book, but I'm
Well,
sure I could find it.
I
Yeah.
thought what you said, I didn't know Carlo Acutis said this wonderful thing. I've always thought
Mm.
of them, of course, the monstrance typically will have rays of light as if rays of light coming out from it, right? In the metal, it's like spikes. And I've always thought of adoration as like a beam of light. And I love the idea with the sun, you get tan. You don't have to try to get tan, just be in front of the sun, you get tanned.
Mhm. You get a
That's
suntan, S-O-N-tan.
exactly, that's the way grace comes from the Blessed Sacrament, without any question. Yeah, that was just fantastic what you said, I think.
Mm.
What inspired me? Well, okay, so um, in one of my many podcasts, I said something like this. I want to move how lay people think about their Christian life away from emotions and from feelings and even moralistic lessons and towards stations, grades, causes, principles, things that are objective, they're realities, and they have an ordering to them. And that's what the Catholic life is really like. And we have to see that and then live in relation to it. But
Mm.
the endless and homilies need to change. They can't be just psychologizing. They have to change.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that you're getting there is the feelings, that so much we chase
Mm,
feelings.
yeah.
And and we have to be careful of that because, me as a convert, yeah, I had those early feelings, but then that goes dry right away. We hear the Saint Mother Teresa for 40 years, she didn't feel the
Mm,
presence of God. So
yeah.
if we're chasing those feelings, it's not if, it's when that they're going to go away
Yeah.
because they will, but that we go to mass, not for what we get out of it or how
Yeah.
we feel, but we're there for God.
Yeah.
What can we bring to him? What sacrifices? How can we unite our prayer with the prayer of the priest who's in persona Christi through the power of the Holy Spirit? That's what it's about. And if we, rely on those feelings, we're going to be let down. And then what's going to happen? We don't feel God. So then he's not here. Therefore, I can walk away. And I think if we get tied to that, it's definitely dangerous. We hear the moral theistic deism kind of stuff where, God just becomes this kind of distant person
Mm,
and when it feels good or if I need help with something or basically I don't kill anybody, it's like this distant God. And if we rely on not the facts, not the rituals, not this objective standard that he's there whether you feel him or not, that this is what we believe, this is what our faith is based on. I think that we need to do a better job of explaining we hear that to so many Catholics who leave the faith is that I just wasn't being fed.
mm. I think
Well,
that's
yeah,
that's
the Eucharist, come on.
I think that's why I lead with the essay "Moms at Mass" because they're women. Okay, so women are perhaps most inclined to be
Yeah.
emotionalistic, but they don't act in a very emotionalistic way. They act very rationally with their will, and they get to Mass and they get to the place of grace, and they receive those benefits of grace, even if their kids are running around and they're crazy and they have to be in the anteroom of the church for most of the Mass. So they're the greatest witnesses to what we're talking about right now, those moms at Mass.
Mm. Dr. Pakaluk, one of the we talked about a couple of concepts from the book, the idea of being courageous, bold, um, rediscovering our Christian faith and what it has to offer us. The other one that stood out to me was this idea of fear. You talk about holy fear, and kind of uh, rediscovering what that is. I'm thinking if I'm somebody, and you know what, I speak from a first person witness. One of the greatest prayers I think that I can pray comes from the Our Father, and that's Thy will be done. But that's a
Mm,
scary thought.
mm,
That's a scary thought. I don't want to give up control. How many of us want to give up control of our lives? The idea of being shocked by holiness. Well, I mean, is that going to be a good shock? I mean, when you think of shock, it's usually electrical and
mm.
you try to stay away from it. But what does it mean to confront fear, and why reclaim, rediscover a sense of holy fear?
Well, of course, the scripture says fear is the beginning. Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and reverence is certainly a kind of fear.
Mm,
Um, fear doesn't mean acting out of fear. So if I'm repairing a car and I know that something could go wrong, possibility of steam escaping or gas escaping. I'm going to act with prudence. I'm going to act with care. I'm going to act with due attention, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to repair the car. And I think that in dealing with God, we have to understand this creator of the entire universe out of nothing, and He's all holy, and that's the reality of God. So if you're not frightened by that, actually, there's something wrong with you. I mean, even the angels frighten the most holy people. They show up, and the angel has to tell Mary, "Be not afraid." So um, that I suppose that's one of it's a source. Fear is a source of of movement. I mean, how many times do we get afraid of, this problem needs attention. I really need to start dealing with it because we're afraid. So I think that's what I'm trying to get at in
yeah.
this
Yeah, and I, I
discussion.
I think you hit it right with the word reverence.
Yeah.
Francis Chan's book, he talks about it as the fear and love together. It's a reverent intimacy, but it's. I heard a story about a pastor who went to jail. He was embezzling money basically from his church, and one of the prisoners went to go see him in jail. He's like, "Well, when did you stop loving God?" He goes,
Mm,
"Well, I never stopped loving God. I stopped fearing God."
mm,
Because if we think that no matter what I do all the time, it's all mercy, mercy, mercy. And if we think about the mercy before we do the sin, then we'll just go on sinning because he's going to forgive me no matter what. And I think that's the trick of the devil, that we have God isn't going to contradict himself. That's why he had to die on the cross.
mm,
There had to be something to be atoned for, that there is still has to be this tension between fear and love. Like if my kids don't fear me somewhat, which they don't very like. I was definitely scared of my dad, not because he was abusive, but just because I had this holy respect for him.
mm,
And like my kids are like they're not scared at all. Like I got to act tough, and they're still not even scared. I'm like,
mm,
but that translates to like a respect, like a good coach, not
yeah.
not like, oh, I fear, like I'm gonna run laps, but you don't want to let them down. Like
Yeah.
I think that fear could be a bad. A lot of people see that as like a bad word. And it's like, oh, well, you fear it, why? Because he's authoritarian, or all that kind of line of thinking. Versus, no, that fear comes because I don't want to disappoint him.
Yep.
I don't want to let him down.
Yeah.
And those are the coaches and teachers that I had that were the best. That I didn't want to disappoint them. And I think we need to get a healthy tension between that mercy and that justice. Because if we go into sin thinking about God's mercy instead of his justice, then we're going to keep on going on down and not being obedient and doing these bad habits. But if we think about his justice before we sin, we're less likely to go out and sin. And I think that this world, we hear a lot about, well, God loves you. He loves you the way you are. It's so great, but we don't hear that much anymore. It's like, well, he's the one who created the whole universe, out of nothing. And it's like, we should be scared, what it's going to look like,
Yeah.
and when we do come face to face with God.
Do you ever pray the divine office?
Mm.
Because
Sometimes.
what strikes me is that every day it begins with Psalm 95. And this is a warning. Don't harden your hearts. Don't do what the Israelites did. They
Mhm.
tested me, um, and they were excluded. They were punished. They couldn't enter the Holy Land. I mean, I think that that's very telling. Despite your clerics may say all they want, that mercy, 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 as you say, in the divine office, which all the priests and religious are supposed to say, and it permeates the whole church. The very first thing that anyone ever reads or prays any day is a warning. Like, don't
Mhm.
do this because God will correct you and possibly judge you and condemn you. They're there as examples to you. So the spirit of a father is a spirit of correction, and your father has to be, of course, understanding of weakness and has to be somewhat soft, has to joke a little bit. But the father is mainly interested in the character of his children and will correct. And that never seems pleasant when you're being corrected, but it's an absolutely necessary task. And that aspect of human life has almost been drained
Mhm.
out of our church culture. You never hear any priest correcting anybody anymore, and we all need correction. We all need correction every single day. And
Honestly,
yeah, go ahead.
that's such a great point. That's our pastor here, Father Sammy Miletta. He, if you're ever in our area, we'd love to have you over for mass and show you around. And you'll notice coming here, and Bobby and I can both speak into this at length. You're gonna see a church that was built to seat 750 people. That every Sunday we pull out chairs, folding chairs, 1,200 max capacity. We have three masses. We don't know what to do with people in the parking lot. And you look at around the congregation, it's men our age with families. Um, you look at what the parish offers: men's Bible studies, alpha, men's workout groups. And again, it's all men across the age spectrum. But why are they coming? Our pastor doesn't shy away from challenging.
Mm,
He does it
interesting.
with love. He
Yep.
does it with love.
High standards.
And there's trust. This idea within the church that it's starting to slowly crack, and I hope that we do away with it, that a priest gets assigned for a 3-year term, maybe 6 years, maybe 9 if he's a pastor, and then he's off somewhere else.
Mm,
You have given that man, you've cut him off at the legs before he's even had a chance to start anything.
mm,
He's had no ability to develop relationships and to establish trust. Our pastor, we've been blessed to have him for over 22 years. So he has that standing within the community. They know his heart. So when he issues a challenge, it's received well, and men are responding to it.
yep.
Like our fathers, if you're listening, please challenge us. We want to be challenged. What you said, Dr. Pakaluk, like a father is one who's concerned with the character of his sons and his daughters. And if he does reprimand, it's out of love.
Mm,
And that's what
yep.
authentic love is.
Exactly.
It's not this 90s aughts, you know, what we're in 2025 now. It's not this sense of love where you're just accepted and everything's okay and you can be yourself. No, that strikes against what love is. It strikes against what actual freedom is. It strikes against so many things that are instilled within us.
I do think we're in a time of the church where the laity, I mean, the Second Vatican Council taught this. It's kind of the time of the laity, where the laity have a lot of responsibility for moving the church forward. And
Mm,
I don't spend a lot of time griping and complaining about our clerics and our priests and our bishops. They're trying to do the best they can. I'll say that. I've met a lot of bishops. I'm astounded at how fine they are. The bishops I know personally. A lot of priests are kind of, they understand they're in the trenches, and they're very strong and they're very well trained. But this kind of leadership in masculinity, it seems to me, does need to be coming from the laity. And yeah, and you guys are doing it.
That trench image is a great one
Yeah,
because they do so much. I mean, we only see a fraction, but before my entrance into the church as a seminarian and now as a
yeah,
pastoral associate, I just thought the priest walked around between Sunday masses from week to week, praying rosaries, just kind of kicking dust. Just that's how he spent his life. I had no idea the
yeah,
amount of work, the amount of giving of themselves that they do. I love our priests, but
yeah,
all I'm saying, and all I think that we're saying is, we want to help. We want to be in the trenches.
yeah.
I by no means want to see a lay run church.
Mm.
I want to see our bishops and our priests, our Holy Father. I want to see them strong. I want to see them up front. And I want them to know that they've cultivated, called, and equipped an army of men and women behind them who are here to move the kingdom forward and to proclaim the name of Jesus.
That's fantastic. I think you should write a book of essays. You're very you're very articulate. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to leave pretty soon.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Pakaluk, let's wrap it up on this one. The Shock of Holiness, I got so much out of it. I pray that people pick it up. It's what I loved is the essays, you can just take them bit by bit
yeah.
and just journal with them. How would you recommend that people use the book?
I would say two or three things. I would say first, leave it on the breakfast table and let your kids pick it up and read them because they're really digestible essays. And or second, I would give it to friends who are intelligent because the essays, although they're approachable, they do make certain challenges, intellectual challenges, but they fascinate in that way for somebody who's smart. And then the third thing I'd say is, in consultation with your spiritual director, if he approves, they certainly can be used for spiritual reading because they're each one is 1,000 words, so it doesn't take that long to read them, and you can ponder them.
Mm.
What's the best place where people they want to follow your work or they want to see what you're up to? Obviously, you're at the Catholic University. We know that, but if they can't get to Washington D.C., what's the best way people can find you?
Well, I went off social media when I was on sabbatical last year, and I read 6 books. So I think I'm going to stay off of social media.
Wow.
Wow, that's good.
My thing is not tweets or X posts. I'm just not really good at it, and it becomes an
The problem
obsession.
is you need them to sell the books,
Yeah,
right?
maybe.
That's kind of the
Yeah,
space we live in today.
yeah, maybe.
Ignatius is doing a good job for you, though.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
some friends can do that for me. But listen, I'll just say I'm not yet swamped with fan mail. I get fan mail, but I'm not swamped by it. So if anybody wants to write to me with a question, just go to my website. It's Pakaluk at cua.edu and just write me an email. I'm a speed reader. I can type really fast. I'll just get back to you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for giving us a lot of your time and your wisdom and writing this book and the many of the other books and six more in the pipeline. Sounds like so. We'll be looking forward to all the things that you got coming forward.
Well, look at the next one. It's coming. It's already out. Scepter Press. It's called The Company We Keep. It's on friendship.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. Well,
Mm.
thanks. Thank you for taking the time and thank you for writing so many books and being passionate about our Lord and being purposely Catholic. We really do appreciate it.
It's
Yes.
been
Thank you.
really, really fun. Great to spend time with you guys.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
If And you as well. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you got anything out of it, like Dr. Pakaluk said, please share it with someone that you know. And it always helps if you can send us a like, leave us a comment. What did you think? Have you picked up Shock of Holiness? What did you think of what was said in the video? Take care. God bless.